There's never enough content when it comes to Daniel Ricciardo. The 8-time race winner has peaked in Red Bull and has had a fair career in Renault, and although he is now connected with multiple teams regarding the 2023 season, Ricciardo has had a fall in his form. Some of that could be blamed on McLaren and some on his driving style and his inability to adapt to the MCL 36. Nevertheless, Ricciardo is one hell of a gentleman and a charismatic individual, and is likely one of the most positive faces when it comes to Formula 1. Drivers in the grid have shared their thoughts when it comes to Ricciardo's performance and him as an individual, and we're going to go over them in this video. Therefore, buckle up and sit around with us until the very end of it. Lewis Hamilton. The 7-time world champion is arguably one of the best drivers in the history of the sport, as his accomplishment has been done by Schumacher only. He currently holds way too many records, including most pole positions and most race wins, and the most important one being tied with the most championships with Schumacher. When asked about Ricciardo being his teammate back in 2017, Hamilton praised the Aussie and said, "Daniel is a fantastic driver. It would be a privilege to race against him. He's a great character. He always brings a lot of positivity within his team. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. I take the compliment that people say they want to race against me. I don't truly necessarily believe that people want to be up alongside me, because that is now always necessarily the best thing for an individual." You look at Daniel, he's got a great driver in his teammate, and to be honest, he has got to really work to outperform him first. You've always got to beat the person you're with first, before you can look at competing against someone else and beating them. That's just my personal opinion, said Hamilton all the way back in 2017 when Ricciardo was still in his prime and racing for Red Bull. Ricciardo was seen comforting Lewis Hamilton after the 2021 championship ended the way it did, being one of the first drivers that showed sympathy for the Briton after his championship was stripped away from him at the last lap in the last race. Now, Ricciardo is rumored to take Hamilton's place from 2024 and onwards, and both of them have a good relationship, given the fact that Ricciardo was one of the few drivers that supported Hamilton regarding the porpoising issues in Baku. Lando Norris. Of course, if you want to see how good a driver is, you have to compare him to his teammate. In this case, Ricciardo is failing to compete with Norris, as the young Briton is able to absolutely outperform the car that he is given. Nevertheless, Norris has spoken about his relationship with Ricciardo, saying that Netflix wants to create a false drama between these two, and he also spoke about Ricciardo's driving style and why that could be the reason that Daniel isn't able to perform as good as we're used to seeing from him. There's a bit of me and Daniel going side by side, and I claim he pushes me off, which is from a completely different race, as long as they don't overdo it. Make someone look like they have done something they definitely haven't. I think that's too far, said Norris, implying that his relationship with Ricciardo is good and healthy. I do feel like it's a difficult car to drive, our car, said Norris regarding Ricciardo's struggles. You know, I think our characteristics, which he's also had over the past few years, even Carlos said it, they're quite specific and unique, so some of the driving styles you need are like not ones you kind of grow up with learning, and therefore you have to adapt quite a bit, said Norris, who also spoke about how Daniel made him a better driver. I think, especially in the first half of the season, when Daniel was kind of getting up to speed a lot more, it was more about how I can lead the team myself, and how I have to work without as much help from the other teammate. Just because Daniel was getting up to speed. Now, it's more equal, it's just a different situation, said Norris. Max Verstappen. The Dutchman has been the main reason why Ricciardo left Red Bull, since the Aussie felt like Red Bull was prioritizing Verstappen much more than him, and that his future should be pursued somewhere else. Everyone thought that the relationship between Max and Ricciardo would go bitter after that move, but that wasn't the case, as both of them continued with their great relationship. When asked about Ricciardo, Max said, "Daniel Ricciardo was the hardest to race against in the beginning, but that last year I think I learned a lot and knew what I wanted. In the end, he was the closest to me. I think he was the best because of his experience. He's been in F1 for a long time," said Max, singling out Ricciardo as the hardest teammate he's had to beat in his tenure in Red Bull racing. Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian and Ricciardo were teammates for a short amount of time, just one season in 2014. After that, Vettel moved to Ferrari and was replaced by Kvyat, but nevertheless, the duo was able to build a relationship between each other. Rest assured that it was one that helped Ricciardo a lot when it comes to growing in the sport, since he was still young and had to match the four-time world champion's pace in Red Bull. When asked about Ricciardo, Vettel said, "I think he's doing a very good job. I'm not doubting that, and he has been able to get the maximum out of the car, which he has been since race 1, which is good. On my side, we had a couple of things to overcome, but it is good to see the other half is doing well," said Vettel, who was labelled as the best teammate Daniel has ever had from Ricciardo himself. Jenson Button, another former F1 champion that shared his opinion on the Aussie, is Jenson Button. The Briton was able to win the championship in 2009 with Brawn GP, and he is now working in Sky F1 as sports analyst and critic. Therefore, we must say that Button's opinion weighs more than the other drivers in some kind of way, and when asked about the Aussies' move to McLaren back in 2021, Button said, "This move to McLaren is a make or break, I think, for Daniel in his career. He is still young, but you have got to start moving towards a team that can give you race wins and hopefully fight for a championship. It's an important move for him and hopefully it pays off. McLaren with a Mercedes in the back is very competitive," said Button, who continued to talk about Ricciardo's career in F1, saying, "I'm probably more impressed with what he has done at Renault than what he ever did at Red Bull. To have won over Nico Hülkenberg in his first year like that, I think it's very impressive. Now, we've just seen what Nico can do in Racing Point. It shows his strength. So for Daniel to do that, it's very impressive," finished Button. One of the biggest problems that Daniel had was adjusting to the 2022 car of McLaren. In the first half of the season, Ricciardo has done very poorly and scored just 19 out of the 95 points of the team. Therefore, he was publicly bashed earlier in the season by the team's boss Zak Brown, saying that Ricciardo has not met neither his or the team's expectations. Now that his seat is truly a hot one to sit in, due to all of the rumors, Ricciardo has shared his opinion on the 2022 car, saying, "I remember in a race stint last year, just speaking out loud, you do 20 laps and you could stay within 3/10 probably for a 20-lap stint at times and be very in control. Where I feel like the stint variation is a lot bigger this year. I think today, in Hungary with the wind, these cars are so sensitive. That probably does make it harder to find that consistency. But I guess when it's on more of a knife edge, when there's more variables, that's where it starts to become that step more difficult. Simply never got going. Mediums was okay at times, was just tricky. Soft at the beginning was nowhere. Happy to have a break, not the 6 months I wanted," added Ricciardo, as the car was also labelled as less versatile from the technical director, James Key. What do you think of Ricciardo as a driver? Do you think that the Aussie deserves to be treated like he is in McLaren, or do you think that it's mostly the car and there is still a chance for him to perform well in F1 even if he isn't in McLaren F1? Let us know in the comments below.